Well, hey guys, welcome back to the shop. I'm actually standing in it. As you can see my yard behind me. It's early fall. You can tell all the leaves have fallen. So I picked up a generator. You know how it is whenever you find a good deal. You just can't pass it up. I picked up another generator, and I haven't done a video on just kind of overall my impression on it or whatnot. It's a Honda, so you can already guess how that's gonna go. But nonetheless, I want to do a video with you guys to show you how to change the oil in a Honda generator. So what I've got here for you guys is a Honda EU2200i generator. To be honest, most of the generators of this era are going to be the same, both the 2000 and the 2200. One thing that, actually two things about Hondas. A, they're super reliable. You can count on them. That's why they command such a hefty price. But then B, maintenance is super easy on them. So I will eventually do a video on this machine right here. It's been a good one. I picked it up used, but it had under 100 hours on it, so I wouldn't even consider this thing broken in. But today, we're primarily worried about doing an oil change on this machine right here. You're only going to need a couple things. You're going to need a screwdriver. You can either use a flathead or a Phillips head. You're going to need a long funnel, like a transmission funnel here, just because it's hard to pour if you don't have a long funnel. Make sure it's clean. And then you're going to need some oil. A 10W30 weight is what this particular engine calls for. And you're going to need something to catch your excess oil in. So I'm going to find something real quick to do that with. Well, this here ought to do, right? I found that in the bed of a truck. So let's use that. So, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this generator here so you guys can get a better look at it. So this is the side panel. Okay, so I've got the generator spun around here where you can see it. This is the panel we got to take off. But before we even do that, one thing I want to recommend to you guys that not a lot of people do is I'm going to run this thing for just a few minutes to get the oil warmed up. It does two things. It warms the oil up to where it flows a little bit easier. And then B, it actually will stir some of the sediment and crap up at the bottom of the engine and kind of distribute it inside of the oil, suspend it. That way, whenever you pour it out, you're pouring out some of that dirt and contaminant and everything like that, and it's not just staying settled at the bottom of your engine. I think that's especially important on a small engine like this, that this does not have an oil filter, so keep that in mind. So I think it is important to run it every once in a while to stir that up whenever you are changing the oil, and also to keep fresh oil in it, because like I say, this oil is just running in there, and whatever it catches in there, it just sits in there. So I went ahead and turned this thing on, and I've turned the vent on as well. So it is a little bit cold today, so I'm going to choke this thing, and I'm going to let that fuel drain down into there. In fact, I may need to put a little fuel in it. I don't know that it has any in it. While we're doing this, Honda says it's okay to run ethanol in this up to E10. I'm just going to tell you guys, I mean, you can do that. I prefer not to, because ethanol has been proven to gum up carburetors, and it just eats rubber gaskets and O-rings and seals, and oh my goodness, it's, a generator, typically something like this is going to be sit in storage for a long time. Ethanol gas degrades faster, and it eats those parts up like crazy. So I'd recommend, if you can find non-ethanol in your area, fill it up with non-ethanol. Now, because the machine, you have to tip it on its side to, because you have to tip this machine on its side to change the oil, I would recommend doing this whenever there's not much gas in it. So don't put just a ton in there, but I put just a little bit. I wouldn't even say, I'd say maybe just a quart is all I put in there. And we'll see if this thing starts up. How many pulls do you guys think? Let's find out. It took a few. Forgot to take the choke off. Let's let this thing run for just a minute or two, and then we'll drain that oil. I did go ahead and get me a shop towel just because we are going to probably spill just a little bit whenever we do this. So now I've let the generator run for just a minute or two. Let's take off this front cover. There's one screw right here. Like I said, you can use a flathead or a Phillips head. It's a big screw, so it's easy access. And we just remove this cover right here. Yep, and that's pretty much it. It's as simple as that. Right down here, this is the oil. This is both the oil cap and the dipstick for it. So whenever I pull this thing out, you're going to see my engine oil is pretty clean because this thing's only got 6-7 hours on it. But nonetheless, it needs to be changed. So honestly, these things are really easy to do. You got your dipstick here so you can kind of see where it needs to be on that hatch mark. But also, you can do it a couple ways. You can measure out 14 ounces because that's how much it holds. You can measure up on your dipstick. It goes about 3/4 of the way up if I remember right. Or you can do it till you see it at about the bottom of the threads here. And that's when you know it's filled up. But all we're going to do is take this dipstick out. I'll set it over here. I'll get my trusty cup here. And this is something they designed a little bit better on the EU2200 versus the older style. The older style was recessed, and you would spill all the oil inside of there whenever you're trying to empty it. But check this out. The way it's set up now on the newer style, just pour it out just like this. Hey, buddy. You pour it out just. That's good, buddy. My little boy, he likes to make videos too. He pretends like he's making videos. He sees his dad doing that all the time. Makes me pretty proud. So I'm just going to tilt this machine, as you can see here. Might be handy to have a partner hold it for you. I'm just going to let it run out of here until it's pretty well done. And now we're empty. That right there goes to show how dirty some oil can get. You know, that oil can't have more than 10 hours on it. And it looks pretty dirty to me. So I'm going to put this oil in my oil catch pan. All right. Now I'm just going to pour this old oil right in here. Now you can see that oil was dirtier than what you really think it would be. I'm just going to turn that right there, and I'm going to let that drain out for just a little bit longer. There we go. Moving back over to our generator here. Now we're going to take our handy dandy funnel here. I'm going to set it down inside of the, where we drained it is also where you fill it. I'm going to do that. And then here's a little pro tip for you. I always recommend shaking your oil in its container before putting it in. Why? Well, it's the same reason that we shake it in the sense of an engine that's been sitting for a while. All the contaminants fall to the bottom and they're not in suspension. The same happens with new oil, except we're not talking about contaminants. We're actually talking about the additive package, the wear package that they put in here. That will sit at the bottom of this. So if you stir it up and shake it up, you're moving that package into the suspense of the oil, and you'll get some of that additive, you'll get more of that additive package whenever you go to pour it into your engine. Like I said earlier, I just happen to have a quart of the Honda brand oil. Really any 10 W30 weight oil will suffice for what we're doing here. So you can either measure out 14 ounces or fill it up till you start seeing it on the threads, which is probably what I'm going to do. I don't really have a cup that I want to measure with. So I've got 32 ounces here, so I'm going to use not even quite half of it. I'll have a fill for another year. Does it show on the side of this? Oh, look at that. Beautiful. So let's see. It shows how much is in here. So we had 32 minus 14. What does that put us at? Puts us at about 18. So I need to go a little bit under the 20 mark here. Go slow. Okay, look at that. We are getting close if I'm holding it level here. Let's take a look and see if I can see it at the bottom of these threads yet. You know what? I can. And you know what we could do? We could measure with our dipstick real quick. So, take my dipstick, simply wipe it off here. We'll set it in there. We'll see where we're hitting. Can't remember if you thread this in or not. Let's see what happens if I thread it in where we... Okay, go for it, buddy. So if I set it in... Oh yeah, we're about 3/4 of the way up. And that oil, if you guys can see it down there, look, you can see, even if I tip this back, it sloshes right back up here. So if I fill this up anymore, it'll fill over and out. So all I'm gonna do now is, just because I like to clean as I go to keep things looking good, I'm gonna clean this out with my little shop rag here. Try to get some of that excess oil out of there. Because what this oil will do if you don't clean it up is, just like the rest of this machine, it'll get dusty, it'll collect dust, and just makes things harder to work on whenever you actually need to go work on them. So now we can take our fill plug, put it back in, and let's put our front cover on now. Take this, sets in the bottom somewhere, something like, or maybe right there. Sits right in there. Take my flathead, turn the screw, and we're back in action. That's a simple job right there, changing the oil on these Honda engines. Most generators it's that simple, but Honda made it just extra simple by, like I say, just look at that. You can use either a flathead, Phillips head for this. You literally need a funnel and some oil, and that's it. In a pinch, if you got in a real pinch, pocket knife could do this. That's what the engineers really worked in your favor when designing this particular model right here. So before we start it up, I want to talk to you just a little bit about kind of my theory on generator maintenance and when it makes the most sense, you know, kind of depending on where you live. You know, if you live where it's hurricane season, then obviously maybe a month or two before it's hurricane season, I'd recommend changing the oil on your generator, test firing it up with some fresh fuel, making sure that it's ready to go. Because what that's going to allow for is a month or two to where if that generator doesn't start, you can troubleshoot, you can try to diagnose and figure out what's wrong with it, to where maybe you can get a part to replace on the generator and it's ready to go, and you're not left flat on your face whenever you lose power or something of that nature. So that goes for if you are involved in hurricane season. Maybe that's not the particular case. If you live kind of in the Midwest like I do, more what we're worried about is in wintertime, if you lose power at your house due to snowstorms or ice storms. Ice storms are really the big thing here. So I like to do this mid to early fall when it really starts to cool off. That way, once again, I have a couple of months before we do start expecting bad weather, to where if something fails on this generator right here and it doesn't start for whatever reason, I can buy the parts to replace it, or if this thing's just a total loss, then I can get ahead of the curve and buy me a different generator, or come up with another strategy for that winter storm. Trust me, guys, I promise you. You know the old joke about how people get prepped whenever they say on the news that you're going to get snow, and you go to the store and all the milk and bread's gone. That is so true. I've seen it. I've heard this so many times from people, whether it's winter storms or a hurricane hit. Go to your local hardware stores. Go to your Home Depots and Lowe's. They'll be sold out of generators. So you want to make sure that yours is up and ready to go for whenever you need it. After all, isn't that what you bought it for? Okay, that's enough preaching about your small motors here. In another video, we'll do an air filter, and we can talk more about fuel and different things of that nature if you guys find that useful. But let's go ahead. Let's see, now that this thing's warmed up, how many pulls do you think it'll take? I'm thinking and I'm hoping it'll take one. So one thing I really like about these Honda 2200s is that they have a fuel off setting as opposed to just off. What that does is whenever you turn it to that position, it cuts off fuel to the carburetor. So the engine will run till it burns up all the fuel inside of the carb, which is a really good thing because, as I mentioned earlier, if you run that E10 ethanol, if you run that E10 fuel with ethanol in it, that can, that can be bad for your carburetor. And even really just keeping fuel in a carburetor for storage is not a good thing. it'll varnish and cause all sorts of issues. I promise. If you have a small engine, 9 times out of 10, your issue is going to be fuel related, most likely, and it's probably with the carburetor. It just seems to always be the case. And also, one thing I need to mention, pay very close attention to this, is that you may have noticed I did this in my shop. One thing that you're not seeing, and I'll show you right now, is look at this. I have got a wide open space here, a dual bay garage door here, and it's open all the way. That's the only reason I'm running this thing in my shop. Never ever run a generator or an ATV or a vehicle inside of a shop or a garage with a closed door, because the exhaust that comes out of there is poison, and it is very, very dangerous to your health if you don't have a fresh air supply with that. So if you're going to do this, make sure you're in a very well ventilated area, preferably outside. All right, guys, that was a quick and easy video for you on how to change the oil on one of these generators. Like I say, with the 2000s, it's pretty much the same thing. You just don't have the convenience of that little spill out option. I will leave a solution for you if you own a 2000 on, they make a little fill drain plug that screws into the OEM one. That way you can leverage and have that extra space to dump it out without the oil getting everywhere. But if you got the 2200, it's not an issue. All right, guys, I appreciate you watching the video. Until the next one, stay prepared and take care.